This is part two. Let's continue this journey.
Destroyed the country, murdered Muammar Gaddafi, and now has left it a ruin. They don't control it. It is a ruin. Which war, as such, has the United States ever won in modern times? I don't know. I would like to be told. I know there's a reputation of the United States as being able to use its military and win things. What the United States military is very good at, George, is breaking things. It's not very good at building things or controlling things. It's excellent at breaking things. I'll give them that. They lost the war against Cuba in 1962 when they invaded at the Bay of Pigs. They tried to assassinate Fidel Castro 100 times, maybe more. Some say 900 times. Failed each time. The United States is not that competent. We believe that Israel is very competent. If Israel were very competent, why hasn't Israel been able to destroy the Palestinian resistance, which is fighting it with the minimal amount of arms? You know, there's Israel with every single modern weapon the United States has. And then there are the Palestinians with effectively the kind of guns that you and I might go on a hunt together with. And yet Israel cannot destroy the Palestinians. What people need to understand is wars are not won merely by arms. Wars are won by politics. And if your politics is all wrong, you cannot subordinate people. You cannot bring them to your side. You know, what happened in World War II was, and this is something that people do not accept, but must accept. What happened in World War II was that the Chinese communists and patriots, who lost 25 million people pinning the Japanese down in Asia, the Chinese communists and patriots and the Soviet citizens, 27 million of whom died, and who defeated 80% of the German Wehrmacht, the German army in the Eastern Front. They won the war against fascism together. The United States enters late into the war, loses 500,000 people compared to 52 million Soviets and Chinese. So even in that war, the United States didn't win. It was the politics of anti-fascism that enabled the Soviet Union and the Chinese to defeat Japanese and German fascism, as well as Italian fascism. They won politically. There was enormous cost of life, of course. I don't want to undermine that, but there was a politics. What's the politics in this ridiculous adventure in Iran? What does the United States want to do? They want to put the Crown Prince of Iran, rejected even by people in the diaspora, not a chance. In Venezuela, Maria Corina Machado, an absolute joke of a person, even Trump decided she was not worth fit for purpose. I mean, what are we talking about, George? Let's first think about, Keir Starmer, unfit for purpose in the UK. Let's think about Emmanuel Macron, unfit for purpose. How are countries like Iran, with thousands of years of history, going to take lessons from such puny politicians as Keir Starmer and Donald Trump? They have their own traditions. They don't need American bombs to place leaders upon their people. They don't need that.
The tectonic plates have already shifted, haven't they? And as a man who theorizes and indeed works for these very changes, the audience will find your perspective valuable. My take on it is that nothing will ever be the same again. Trump cannot win this war. He's desperately trying to get out of it now, after only 2 weeks. And the Jacob Rees-Mogg actually conceded today on television that if Iran wins this war, that the fear of the West will disappear across the globe. He said that as if it was a bad thing. But of course, those of us who have long struggled against empire see it another way. To what extent will these events of the last 2 weeks accelerate the fall of Western hegemony, of the American empire in particular?
Well, I would say, George, that the Western empire has already begun to crumble. It began to crumble substantially, at least in economic terms, in terms of control over raw materials, in terms of control over finance, in terms of control over science and technology. It began to crumble or to fold, to use a metaphor from a card game. It began to fold about 20 years ago, when the financial crisis really hit hard in Western Europe and in the United States. We haven't seen growth rates go above 3 or 4%, except, when there was a recovery after COVID-19. Very poor economic performance. These countries simply not able to produce the kind of new productive forces that we're seeing being developed in India, in China, places like that. I mean, China, of course, we already know about, George, but your viewers will be surprised to learn that India can produce high-speed rail up to 200 kilometers an hour from start to finish in a state-run train factory. I mean, that's extraordinary. A much more efficient train than produced in most of the West. So in that sense, the West has already been put on the back foot. There are two areas of modern human life where the West still maintains some dominance. One is in the area of information control. They have a huge advantage. I mean, they control the undersea cables, they control the satellites, they control so many of the platforms we utilize, the YouTubes, the Facebooks, and so on. They have a lock on information control. They also control the kind of information that gets out there. I mean, that's cracking a little bit. We saw that with the genocide against the Palestinians, but still, BBC is able to exercise considerable hegemony over reporters in Africa, Asia, and so on. We just sort of copy what comes on CNN or BBC or Agence France Presse or Associated Press, Reuters. These are all colonial news outlets, but they are the ones with the money and the power and the influence. This has to be broken.
And this is what I tell people right now. Go to YouTube, stop watching mainstream television, stop watching it, go to YouTube and get your news from there. You can watch news from around the world, and then you can make a true opinion about what's going on, because what you'll see when you get to YouTube is a whole nother reality. Let's continue this.
Down, and thus far, the new emergent centers, India, China, Russia, and so on, haven't really been able to tackle this giant behemoth of the news engine of the West. And the second area of human life where the West still prevails, George, is of course weaponry. They have the capacity to destroy cities, but they don't have the capacity to govern. And I think that's the key way we need to understand how the empire has already collapsed. We are not afraid of them and have not been now for several decades. That fear has dissipated. The curtain in front of the Wizard of Oz has fallen. And now we see this little character, this Marco Rubio, wearing shoes that are 2 sizes too big for him, given to him by his puppeteer. I mean, this makes people ridicule the leaders of the West. They are not impressive. If they ever wore beforehand. I tell people jokingly, I was reading bits and pieces of Angela Merkel's, memoir, and I felt, well, maybe Angela Merkel is the last interesting European leader, at least in my era. After Angela Merkel, I haven't seen anybody who's...
So there we are, folks. We're in this little quandary where we have a bunch of puppets, mental midget puppets, running our country, because they're working for this massive expansion around the world so they can control everything. And who's driving them is the old banking system, folks. Yeah. The old banking system, the old oligarchs, this old world affairs. This is part 2, the end of part 2. We're going to go into part 3. There's more history for all of you. Please share and like and hit the like button, share, like button. This is the Conscious Hour, and thanks for tuning in. That's the end of part 2.